So what do you think about the severe weather for today? Are you going to be affected by this? Well, it looks like we have a slight risk now in Missouri into Kansas here, surrounded by a large marginal risk all the way up to North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, through Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma here. With larger general thunderstorm risk up into the Northeast, the deep South, Southeast, and parts of Texas, and into Utah and Colorado today. All right, so now we have a small tornado risk here also, Missouri into Kansas, right through Kansas City, down just to the east of Wichita here, Springfield, Missouri, all along I-44. Like I said, Kansas City is the biggest city really within this. Now we look at hail. The hail potential is the most impactful today, I think, with the slight risk of hail here in the same area where you have your tornado risk. And we have a 15% hatch risk here. Within the hatch risk, you have a potential for 2-inch hail. In the 5% area and outside the hatch risk, 1-inch hail is possible today. We also have a severe wind risk, 15% chance of winds exceeding 60 miles per hour in the 15%. And then the 5% risk, less coverage likely today. And also a 5% risk up in South Dakota and North Dakota today for today's severe threat. So as a reminder, here's a look at the convective outlook for today. Remember, our slight risk is here into Kansas City area. So we're going to focus on this area for the analysis today, right? Because the tornado risk is there, wind risk is highest there, and so is a hail risk, all right? So we're going to focus on that, maybe cover the broad area as well, all right? So going back to categorical, here's our area of interest. There's our area of interest, pretty much, all right? But we're looking at GFS. Let me take this off real quick. Just get your overall analysis, what's going on. We have this weird flow pattern here, roughly about now 1 p.m. Eastern, all right? Kind of an interesting flow pattern here. We have this, this is 500 millibar. We have the flow going this way, some small scale ridging out west, and this buckling jet stream here. Kind of a split flow going up here, and the ridging just in between, it being sandwiched this way. Another low offshore, and the main feature up here, you see you have this here, very strange flow pattern. Also some hints of some subtropical connection coming this way, and then going this way, right? And this connects back up here. Some broad flow coming this way as well. Had some really interesting weather up here, and this is going to end up driving to the south eventually. All right. So taking this off, let's zoom in a little bit to our area of interest, right? Roughly in the Kansas City area. There's not a lot of large scale forcing going on here. So we're going to rely on mesoscale features for the severe weather today because the main trough is way up here. Take this off. And you're going to have some ridging building in. You almost can see it already. Just some height rises. Okay. So what is going to drive this threat today? That's going to be a good question here. 3 p.m. You can almost make out just a subtle perturbations in the flow here. Let's look at the surface too and see if there's a surface flow that may be developing here. The good way to look at that is a 2-meter dew point in wind here. Maybe a weak low pressure developing here. Now we look at the MSLP, just a broad, maybe a low pressure, another low pressure maybe here, up here. So not a lot of large scale forcing no matter what we do here. So, but what we do see, if we do have a surface low, this is going to try to move this way, right? And you have these dew points in the 60s and 70s, all in this area, and even up to the north here. All right, so kind of a large pan there. Moisture is sufficient, right? Of a, I would say, vorticity associated with this, going this way. This is 6 p.m., okay? That would give us enough lift in the atmosphere and spin to give us tornadoes and other kinds of severe weather here. Now we get a sounding like a poke of the atmosphere here. You can see from the sounding it's very linear at this point, right? And you can also see there's a cap in place at the lowest levels. You do have some cape above that, some energy, right? But Cape is pretty meager, 800, right? Mixed layers, 478. All right, so this is, let's go back to the model. And there's quite a bit of dew point temperature spread as well. So that kind of sounding to me screams hail and gusty winds more than anything, okay? Let's look at the lapse rates. Lapse rates are all over 6C per kilometer. So pretty steep lapse rates. This screams tornado. You have plenty of cape. You have plenty of instability here. You have plenty of lift. Although the photograph is kind of wonky here. You see it kind of goes back on itself and kind of small. Tornado, severe. All right. Your LFC and LCL, which is your listed level of free convection, or LCL, are close to the ground. You see your decape here, 1348 joules per kilogram, and that's the way we measure the potential for gusty winds due to drier air aloft and downloading in the atmosphere, right? So that's very high values, which would lead to potential for large hail and gusty winds in this environment. So screams severe weather. Tornadoes, not so much, although we do have some curvature in low levels. It kind of goes back on itself here. All right. So let's move through a couple more hours. You see this surface low here. It looks like a surface feature. Maybe this dry line through this area. Let's take a sounding from the Wichita, Kansas area just to see here. Okay, look at the same parameters here. Cape, 4,000 joules per kilogram. Cape is just energy, sufficient energy in the atmosphere. Okay, energy. You have more of a straight line wind threat here. And, all right, and you see how it equates on this, just severe. D cape, downdraft cape, 1500. Lapse rates, plenty steep, meaning you have plenty of lift available, right? For the parcel to go through the atmosphere here, right? And lots of dry air aloft. So likely a hail and wind threat more than anything, okay? Now, let's take another sounding from the Kansas City area. Move this a little further towards 7 p.m. Yeah, so your decape is still high here. Lapse rates are just incredible in this area. And photograph, although not large, it does have some curvature in it. So looking at that again, it's a marginal threat for tornadoes in this area, what they're talking about, right? If you remember, we have a marginal threat here. Given these parameters, definitely a chance for a tornado. And I agree with the assessment that tornado is a less likely threat today. So that being said, detailed analysis. Let's go into the future radar here. So here we are at 7 p.m. Eastern. Not a lot going on. Okay. Storms maybe start to fire here. Storms don't really fire till like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. here. And they really start to blow up over the Kansas City area in the overnight hours. Okay. Even up to Bismarck, Sioux Falls. You can see right over Kansas City, maybe some rotating storms here. St. Louis towards Columbia. Okay. Now let's look at another model of Rufus. Pretty much shows the same thing. As always, it's a little bit more overdone with the convection here, but pretty much shows the same thing. And that complex moves to the east there. Okay. Significant tornado parameter. See, it's the highest around the Kansas City area as we go through time here, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 overnight hours, and then moves to the east. Supercell composite. See how it's maximized along into the, it looks like a warm front or boundary here, going through Kansas City and Columbia, and maybe some values up into North Dakota, South Dakota here, parts of Iowa. Okay, so that makes sense given the parameter space. So one other thing I want to go over is the Stormnet probabilities. I'd like to look at that to get a really good idea about the different probabilities for tornado, hail, and wind. So here's a Stormnet site. It's really a great site to give a visualization of the tornado threat, wind, and hail threat. And accordingly, we have a very small signal for tornadoes here in the overnight hours. Sioux Falls up to Bismarck, South Dakota, and just to the southwest of Kansas City, 9, 10 p.m., 11, 12, with the most probabilities going over Kansas City in overnight hours, although quite low. All right, switching over to the hail threat. Let's move back in time a little bit. We're roughly 2:15. You see the hail threat really ramps up along this corridor here: Sioux Falls, Sioux City, Omaha, Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, Wichita, even down into parts of Texas, Rapid City, Tennessee, Alabama here. But we're talking about the central U.S., right? So now probabilities really ramp up just to the west of Kansas City in the overnight hours, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., Sioux City, Omaha, and some other low probabilities further south. And that probably moved to the south and east here through Missouri, headed towards Tennessee. And that complex moves to the south and east as an MCS maybe, right? And look at it, it's still going, right? And we get into tomorrow. All right, so moving this back to wind. All right, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just a lot of areas of potential wind threat. And this is greater than 58 mile per hour. It doesn't differentiate between the different threats and the speeds. It's just greater than 58 miles per hour. So centered in Kansas here, into Missouri, towards Mississippi, Alabama, over Sioux Falls, Sioux City, parts of South Dakota, North Dakota as well. And this is 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern, okay? So it's 1 hour difference here, right? So 1 to 2 p.m. Central. The biggest threat really is over Kansas City, I think, right? Or just the south. That threat kind of wanes overnight and then moves to the south and east with this complex. And it's forecast to even increase tomorrow over Tennessee, okay? That line moves to the south and east, maybe an MCS all the way to the Gulf Coast here, okay? So we'll have to monitor that progress of that in the overnight hours. So that's it for the threat for today for severe weather and my analysis. Folks in Kansas City and Sioux Falls, Sioux City and Omaha, and points around there need to be on alert later this evening and overnight hours for the threat of tornadoes, although small risk, hail and gusty winds. So be mindful of that as you plan your evening, although most of you probably be at home about that time, and be safe out there. God bless you all. Have a great day.